All righty. Well, week 10 of college football. Brent, we've been talking about it. Brent Rollins writes for PFF. My neighbor, a doctor, really smart guy, knows a lot of football. We've been talking about it, man. It seems like anybody can beat anybody. And we've had a lot of undefeateds. And Penn State goes down, and Pitt goes down, and Iowa State goes down in the last second. So we're starting to get a little bit more clarity. Indiana runs off 47 straight, which was crazy. But I think we start with Penn State, Ohio State. Obviously, 3 versus 4, huge showdown. I was believing in Penn State. I thought they had a chance to get this done. Their defense played really, really good. Forced some turnovers. Their defense scored. They came out the gates really, really well in the football game, and I thought everything going their direction. And then they couldn't get the offense rolling. I mean, they couldn't get Ty Warren involved. They couldn't get the receivers involved. The passing game was pretty non-existent. The first catch by a tight end or wide receiver was in the 2-minute drill of the first half. Like, they've got to be better than that offensively, and still had chances to win the football game, but I thought they struggled offensively to complete a forward pass to a receiver or a tight end, Brent.
So let's think back to Wednesday, where I'm going to pat my own back a little bit on that one. First one to 20. That was
Yeah.
the Buckeyes. And do we trust James Franklin in big games? Because you got to a point where you could tie the game. You finally get Warren involved, either throwing it to him or direct handoffs, and then you get into a goal-to-go situation and just do nothing.
Lined it up and
Absolutely
try to
nothing.
pound it between the tackles on the same spot when they've got a bunch of defensive linemen and a bunch of gaps covered. And you've got a short yardage QB on your bench that you pride yourself in using over the last couple years in these situations. That was the biggest surprise to me, because Aller's banged up. And listen, I thought Aller scrambled well, by the way. Like, even
He
with the
did,
knee brace,
especially
he took.
early.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did a good job. He would evade sacks, made plays, but Ohio State, you saw against Nebraska, man. They physically met the challenge on the goal line, got the stop. You had an opportunity to tie the football game with 6 or 7 minutes left. And it's just, man, I'd love to see Papula at quarterback, like where I can go east-west and I can go north-south. I can do some kind of variation off of it.
Or what they had just done to get there. They gave it to 44 Warren direct snap.
Who's
I
a
was shocked
mule?
they didn't see that. It was, but when you think about just in the grand scheme of that things with that game, it's basically the same thing we've seen in those games where one team's just more explosive and has better athletes on the outside, and we're able to make plays. And Penn State just is always, and I think if you look at the Big Ten this year, it's like, hey, if you could take Penn State's edge guys, take Nebraska's interior guys, take Illinois' receivers, and if you could put it all together in one team and maybe give them Drew Aller, things like that, then maybe you would beat Ohio State or Oregon. But outside of that, you're not really beating those teams. Now, Indiana, a different story. We're going to get to them in a little bit, but it just seemed like a carbon copy where both of these teams play each other knowing that, like, I was wanting to see more from Penn State, knowing that they kind of are undermanned athletically on the outside. And also Ohio State just like, all right, we're going to eventually win because we have more talent. It feels that way from them. But underrated play of the game, by the way, was the 3rd-and-1 QB sneak after the pick six from Howard, because he's melting. Like, he throws it right to the DB, makes a great play, jumps on the ball.
Great play. It was an
short yardage. They've struggled mightily in short yardage all year, Ohio State, other than Judkins, I think. And then they sneak it and get it. And then they get rolling a little bit and get back in the game, eventually go score on that. I think go score on that drive. Like, outside of, if they get it 3 and out there and Penn State's rolling like they were, okay, different story, but no.
There's a couple of things that stood out. First of all, Chip Kelly was worth every penny. I mean, Chip Kelly, because listen, that offensive line for Ohio State last year was playing left guard for this year, who's a great player, is playing left tackle. Your line is not solidified. Man, did they do an unbelievable job of getting on the edges. So, dude, it was It was using numbers. It was a great job of they ran speed options several times. They ran quads to one side, speed option into the boundary. Like Chip Kelly fakes the toss after they've been going on the perimeter. He half rolls and runs leak and scores
Yep.
a touchdown. Like the offensive plays they got were manufactured, and it was really, really good. A couple of things that Penn State set out with Penn State too. The daggum taunting play, man. You got
I
a
was going to
chance
ask
to
you what you
get off
thought
the
of that.
field. It was horrible. Like you got a chance to get off the field, and listen, I don't think it was egregious by any stretch. I actually think it was a terrible call because the
I
dude had to get up and kind of step over him anyways. I hated the call, but like don't stare down at him and don't make it obvious. Nate
yeah.
Frazier runs in the end zone, does the gator chomp. Those are the things that get you beat. Ohio State goes down the field, scores a touchdown off of that. Those are little things, man. When you're elite, you don't do that in big games. And I thought that was a big time momentum killer for them. And then Penn State, I also didn't understand the defense, Brent, because it was a lot of man to man. But it was a lot of blown assignments with backs out of the
Mhm.
backfield, and they got to Howard occasionally, and then they couldn't get him to the ground. Like I don't think you want to live on an island with those Ohio State wide receivers. But if you do, you dang sure got to be buttoned up front. And several times they weren't. And the defense, listen, the defense was not the reason they lost. The defense scored. The defense only gave up 20. The defense forced turnovers. Like they did a good job, but Penn State, they're a play or two away. Every single time they get in these situations, and James Franklin now 1-13 versus top 5 teams. And it's one more play. It's one more play, one more situation, and they're there sometimes, and when they're there, they just got to make them. And they didn't make them again, and they lose again.
And the thing for them, on the bright side for them, like the rest of their schedule, they should, I think, take care of business and be 11-1 and be in the playoffs. And you're going to be put in the same exact situation where you're going to have to make a play, and then it just depends on the matchup. But it's
Hey,
it's
who
clear
who are
that
their
it's
best?
clear that
Who will Penn State's best win be?
Illinois
Illinois goes down again today to
at
Minnesota.
USC.
USC, obviously, not very good. The rest of the way, they got Washington, Purdue, Minnesota, and Maryland.
Yeah.
So Penn State going to be interesting to compare resumes with maybe a Notre Dame and a loss to A&M.
Mhm.
Like your resume versus them, both maybe not conference championships, both not playing for a conference championship, and who gets in. But where are we going next, man? You want to go? You want to go Georgia, the number 2 team in the country, or you want to go
Uh,
somewhere else?
struggled like Georgia, which, by the way, I had the cool pleasure today. We do with UGA Sports and the Rivals site for Georgia, we do a watch along program. So
Oh
you get
yeah.
like a second screen experience, and it's Coach Donnan,
Oh,
Coach
Jimmy
Jim Donnan.
D.
So I get to sit beside Coach Donnan and comment on the Georgia game today. So that was a whole lot of fun. Which, like for me, I was 11 years old running on the field when Marshall won the national championship, and I'm like 10 feet from Donnan when he gets the national championship trophy. All these years later, sitting beside him calling the game, but
Hey, hey,
Georgia
hey.
found a way.
Did you get any good stories from Jimmy D? Because Jimmy
Always.
D is the best storyteller. I started television with Jim, and he recruited me to Georgia too. But he would tell stories that I'm like, how do you tell that on air? Say it out loud and get away with it, and only Jimmy D would. But
Oh, great stories. Always,
hey,
always great stories with Coach.
Carson
But
Beck
hey,
got away with it again too, and it's a story, man. Like it's got to be talked about at some point, man. I think I saw a stat on ESPN today on the tracker, like only quarterback to in back-to-back games to throw for 3+ interceptions and win both games. And Georgia, you want to see them run the football. You want to see them get more physical up front. They're not great at it. And
no,
I think, listen, we could jump in the film room, and I know you're going to do this on Rivals, I'm sure, with your site, Brent. Like, if you're going to put Carson Beck in the shotgun and that's the offense you're going to run, he's not a running threat. And what it allows me to do is cheat defensively. And then when you put him under center, it doesn't do it as much. And I got to play more balanced. And I think he's struggling. And I'll say this about the offense, and we'll give it to you. Bobo saved him.
yes,
Bobo absolutely saved Georgia today because everything in the second half was manufactured. Everything was quick game. It was reverse. It was
Yes.
reverse again. Like it was like everything he did was to try to alleviate the pressure from Beck because he was struggling and he was trying to find his confidence. And you know, Kirby was trying to do a good job of consoling him and getting him through it. And then you could tell it was like, all right, enough's enough. Like I'm tired of seeing this, and he continues to struggle.
It's Kirby talked about it after the game. He's like, hey, it's a big game for the kid. He's from Jacksonville and things like that. And well, at a certain point, you're a fifth-year senior. You just got to play better. Like, you just can't make the decisions you're making. And the first two interceptions were just egregious. But in late in the game, when you need a play, which, by the way, I think one of the things that they've now found, it's like, who can you trust? If it's a 3rd and 8 plus, 3rd and 7 plus, and they want to go somewhere in a one-on-one situation, they're going to Arian Smith
or 6.
Like love it made some over the middle catches, but
the short stuff
with the quick game, finding different ways to get Dylan Bell the ball, like you talked about with Bobo, because those are their guys. That's who they got. It's not like no rah-rah, no Colby Young. They don't have other depth. Anthony Evans, who'd been coming on, was out of that game. So you've got to roll with those guys and figure out. But like you said, it's such the yin and yang with the team, in that, hey, they probably should be a physical run game, play action team, but you just can't be, and you haven't been able to be because they're not good enough. They're not good enough to me. Diversification in the run game, but they added some of that with reverses, some other things. But and Florida, and by the way, Florida, if Lagway doesn't go down, and with the hammy, that's a whole nother. Like that's a whole nother.
Well, and here's the thing. The thing with Georgia is they're healthy on the O line now. Ratledge played a little bit. Thank God they got back healthy after the first drive. But yeah, I mean that's the part that's kind of I would say the most confusing is they're gonna have to manufacture runs. Frazier still looks like the best back. I mean, he looks the most explosive, the most dynamic. Obviously the end zone celebration is not going to sit well with his coach, and it shouldn't. And you got to get. And listen, I love the way Kirby handles that. And if you didn't hear what Kirby said, he was like, he's a young kid, he's got to grow up. You can't make those mistakes, and we don't do that here. And I just love the way he talks about it, man. He's just like, that's a selfish thing to do, and we don't do that here. So I think you learn from that. But Beck did, in fairness to Beck, like he did put it together. He did. It wasn't a hard degree of difficulty, but he did start to get it together after the third pick. And the third pick wasn't his fault as much. I'd like for him to feel that blitzer.
Pressure.
It was a little delayed blitz, which was a good design. But I think he's got to get rid of the football, and he's got to feel that. The biggest concern, I would say, obviously seeing it, the receivers have been an issue for several weeks throughout the season. Another thing, Brent, is, man, it's just if he has too much time, when he starts to move a little bit, if the eyes go down, the play's dead. He's not throwing it. I'd love to see him just continue to climb in the pocket or be able to keep his feet hot instead of circle around and start to run around when he feels a little bit of pressure. But we can give some props to the Georgia defense because they always keep them in games. And this week, Dan Jackson not playing, Aguayo not playing the first half, and then you got guys that are dropping, out there as well, and you're still flying around, you're still making plays, gave up very, very little, kept yourself in the game, got put in bad situations, still delivered, and this defense is going to have to carry them unless the offense can make some big strides, and the defense is capable of it because they got some dudes and starting to rotate other guys in there as well that I think will continue to help them grow and get better.
You think about large sort of in the big picture with Georgia, we're very nitpicky right here. Not necessarily nitpicky. These are issues, but they're 7-1. They're now atop the SEC standings because A&M just got beat, and in the driver's seat to play in the SEC championship and all that sort of thing. So it's one of those where. But by the way, they also go to Ole Miss next week, who put an absolute spanking on Arkansas.
And can I go because I got something?
Go,
dude. Let me just tell you, one of my favorite competitors, and I say competitor in all of football, is Jackson Dart. Like, if you watch that dude's demeanor and you watch him on the sideline talking to his team, like, he is in it. He's pissed off. They get stopped on 4th and goal on their first good possession, and that dude is in the face of his offensive line. He's on the sidelines yelling. Like, that dude is an elite competitor. I want to go to war with people like him. He's going to run the football. He's going to throw it. He's going to make unscripted plays. But man, I just love the fieriness. And how about the numbers today? 25 of 31 for 515 and 6 touchdowns. We've been saying since Trey Harris was out, who are you going to find? Jordan Watkins. Dude, eight catches for 254. Big plays down the field. They got a tight end in right now that they can work the middle of the field.
Yep.
The run game still isn't elite. Jackson can do enough. They've still been banged up at that spot. But, dude, that's going to be a war next week, because I do think Ole Miss they had some struggles, but they clobbered South Carolina. Obviously, they lost to Kentucky, but I think they got it back together, righted the ship. Like I said, defensive line is elite. All of those guys are going to get drafted at home next week against Georgia.
Yeah,
Ole Miss is going to give them all they want.
Yeah, and that's when you think watching that game, and you highlighted it with talking about Dart, which, by the way, think about the dichotomy of what we just talked about with Beck and his demeanor versus what you're talking about with Dart. But Lane Kiffin coached pissed off in that game, to use your words. And his team seemed to feed off of that. And you see so much of him where it's kind of just here and he's just kind of there a lot of times. He had a fire today on the sideline that I haven't seen. And maybe it's because LSU got the night game next week and he was mad about that. But when he brought that level of energy, it seemed like his team fed off of it. And
you like cantankerous Kiffin? You like that?
I like that. He needs to be that way because, especially when his team needs it. And because that, like you said, next week with their defensive line and the way they get after the quarterback, it's going to be very much a big game.
And the way they stop the run. So, I mean, I think both of those combined together, and Georgia's lack of outside really making big plays. I mean, I don't think they scare you that much. But, man, the SEC, it went from the conference that was the creme de la creme and there was 18,000 teams that was going to make the playoffs to slowly you're starting to see that any given week, man. I mean, it's hit or miss. And Vandy beats Auburn today, and Kentucky gives Tennessee a great game. And Tennessee, I mean, if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm aging by the day, Brent. Like I'm literally, I know you ain't got no hair left, but Tennessee fans who had hair, like Nico's been overthrowing the deep ball like crazy. Finally puts it on the money. You drop a wide open touchdown. Had another touchdown you could have caught. It hit you in the hands. Oh, by the way, your kicker can't kick. Like continues to miss kick after kick. First 4 red zone trips, 1 score. Like you fumbled. Your best player is Sampson. He's an animal. Totes the rock with vengeance and vigor and just so good. And he fumbles too daggum much. So like, Tennessee's defense still plays elite week in and week out, and they're going to keep them in every game. But the offense is it's a mixed bag, and it drives you batty. I bet Tennessee fans are just like, dude, we are so good. Man, we suck. Man, we're good. Man, we suck. Like, just, are you kidding me? Up and down, all over the place. They got to be frustrated. And listen, if you are a Tennessee fan or anybody, if you want to put it in the chat, we'll answer questions and we'll talk through this stuff. Hey, you can get it out. If it's your therapy like it is for me on Saturday nights, you can get it out. But I know Tennessee fans are like, man, deep ball finally dropped. Like,
which, by the way, I'm going to tell you real quick, lean into your mic like that. It sounds a lot better when you do that. But Tennessee next week, by the way, when you're closer to it, it sounds a lot better. But Tennessee next week has Miss State before they go to Georgia. That game against Mississippi State, that's not that, like with the way they're the inconsistencies with the way they're playing. The other SEC game, obviously, that was a big one. A&M had all the sort of rolling and positivity. And honestly, they got a little bit of a taste of their own medicine with Sellers running and Sanders running. After they get the running QB and the running game going last week against LSU, South Carolina kind of hit them with a taste of their own medicine a little bit.
It was. If you're a South Carolina fan, like you're finally like, we put a game together, because South Carolina, Like, this is a really good team that could be so much better. The only game that's really gotten off the rails was Ole Miss, and you faked a punt early that sucked, and you got stuffed on fourth down and it stunk. But eh, Sellers, you had a chance to win the Bama game. Like,
Yep.
Sellers doesn't get hurt, you might beat LSU. And so this is a squad that it's crazy to watch. First of all, the black unis were sweet. Love the
Yep.
black unis.
Atmosphere, all of it.
Look, dude, Sellers is an absolute handful. That is a man child. Like, that dude runs when he wants to run hard, he is going to break tackles and make bad things happen. Rocket Sanders, 5. When you watch 5 touch the football, you saw him in Arkansas for all those years, but you could tell, man, he's had a high ankle sprain. He's back to being who he was. He's an animal. So there's so much variance in what they can do, and the receivers have been banged up, but when they take care of the football, and when they can run the football, they're unbelievable. And A&M's been elite, Brent. They have been elite at stopping the run. They have an elite defensive line. Like, shocked to see them get ran all over. Like, that's not normal. It shows you how
Yeah.
many broken tackles left and right that South Carolina was able to have. South Carolina is a really, really, really good football team. Vanderbilt's a really good football team. Some of these teams that we just used to just cash up to, you're going to beat them. Not anymore. That's just not happening with everybody being everywhere in college football.
So speaking of South Carolina, they're going to have a situation where they might be, if they run the table with what they have at Vandy, home against Missouri, then Wofford, and then at Clemson. They run the table and they're 9-3, and our 3 losses are a 1-score game at Bama, a 1-score to LSU, and a little bit, I guess, to Ole Miss. I don't know. That's one where it's like, okay, bubble. That's the bubble team argument kind of deal. But no, that would be a really good season for South Carolina and a good step forward. But like you said, Vandy took care of business against Auburn today. All right, so let's switch gears, sort of conference-wise. You mentioned it earlier. The ho-hum team of the nation right now is Oregon, who is just taking care of business. And the other team in the Big Ten who got down 10-0 and then all of a sudden reeled off, 47
straight
in a row, Indiana. Like, the Indiana-Ohio State game now sets up to be very intriguing.
Yeah, but let's start with Oregon. Like, we didn't even discuss them on the preview show going into Ann Arbor to play in the Big House.
Yep.
It kind of gives you an idea, doesn't it? Like, of what we think of Oregon. And I think that offense is the hardest offense to stop in college football. Like, there's so many things they do. And Gabriel, he's got those short little tiny strides when he runs, and it looks very unathletic, but he's moving. He's getting there, and he's getting where he needs to go. And
exactly.
They've got enough diversity in their offense, and they've got enough quick game and enough deep threats. And then they're so well coached defensively. Now, defensively, I don't think they're super freaky. Like, I don't think but they're not going to give up huge plays. They're not going to beat themselves. They're pretty good. And so, does that side of the football catch up with them? And but I was thinking about this. What team in college football do you really trust to score a lot of points? Like, I'm going to give you Miami in a heartbeat. Like,
Yes.
Miami is going to score on everyone. Cam, I don't know why. I got so much backlash today, by the way, from this. I said Cam Ward's easily the best player in college football, and people fought me. Like, people were like, "You're crazy." Just go watch the dude. Like, he's stupid. It is a video game that he's playing. He's playing in the Matrix. He took the blue pill or the red pill, whichever one of the pills are, and he's playing like this, and you want to rush him, and he's like this and this, and Restrepo catches everything that's come to him. He had one drop today, I think, but like, they can run the football. They've got an enormous offensive line that protects them. I'm not saying anything about their defense because their defense is ungood, but you better have a complete defense to beat Miami. Like, to stop them, you better have great coverage. You better have great pass rush. You better have a great scheme up front and be able to confuse, because if you don't have one of those 3, Cam Ward's going to figure it out. And he is the best player in college football. He's the most undefensible player in college football. He's the hardest to stop in college football.
So you trust him Who else is on your list in terms of offenses you trust? By the way, Indiana with Rourke right now is kind of getting there, but you haven't seen them. I'm going to go to the Bear. Your buddy Chris Felica with a great tweet that if Indiana finishes 11-1, they would have 0 wins over a team receiving a single point in the AP poll at this point.
And that's
but they get Ohio State.
Listen, that's the hard part of all of this, and that's why you have a committee, and you hope they watch as much as we do, and they love it as much as we do, and they put as much into it as we do. Here's a perfect example, Brent, though, of how that kind of stuff can mess with your eyes and mess with how you feel. Clemson today. What did we talk about? I talked about Clemson coming into this game, and look out, watch out, because they have played nothing since Georgia. They look better. Klubnik looked better. He looked more precise. The passing game looked better. The defense looked really, really good. Louisville took them apart. Louisville had 3 close losses, and they were all to good teams. I wrote it down earlier. They lost to Notre Dame, SMU, and Miami, who were all ranked in the top 20, and all really good teams, athletic teams that could score points, all of them within a score game. So I knew it was going to be the best test. Clemson got pushed around. That was the biggest surprise to me. They got pushed around. Isaac Brown broke the 100-yard mark. They had 130 yards rushing at the half. And so, we quickly saw when Clemson played a better team what happened. So the Indiana, all of that, to me, Brent, will revolve around how well do they play Ohio State? Because if they get destroyed by Ohio State, then I think everybody's going to go, okay, this has more to do with their competition than anything else. And another thing, Nebraska now looking worse and worse. So that win doesn't look as good as it did, several weeks ago when they took apart Nebraska. So the beauty contest, the leg, are you a legs man? Are you a base man? Are you a base man? Those base are trouble. What's your go-to? All of that will matter down the stretch, but those are fun, awesome, debatable conversations.
You talked about the ACC. I think Clemson is firmly in the sort of, I hate the word use the word fraud, but they're not necessarily, I think, a playoff team, and I could see them getting beat once more because of the defensive part we talked about. We already
put Pitt in that category beforehand, and they showed it. They showed it today. I mean, they were living on their defense and doing what. Listen, the Syracuse win was impressive, Pitt. You deserve respect for that. But you kind of saw them and you didn't really believe in them. Yeah, I thought their defense would play better, but SMU looked like the clear superior athletic team. I mean, clearly,
that was the thing. The athletes, the game breakers. Yes, way more.
I mean, it was
was the thing I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it stuck out that SMU has more dudes than Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh always does a great job with their system, but they got destroyed today, and so now you had undefeated SMU in the ACC, undefeated Pitt, undefeated Clemson, undefeated Miami. 2 of them's be gone now, and so
you're heading towards an SMU Miami ACC
over under 100 maybe for that game.
Yes, very much so. And the funny thing you talked about with Miami, every time I would peek on Miami, it's Cam Ward running in circles. But in Restrepo, you mentioned him too, just an absolute baller.
Martinez is a baller.
Defensively, what was it? Somebody made a comment in here. Oh yeah, let's see. Show that. Jeremy says, well, what about Miami's defense? Yeah, we're not going to talk much about that because they made Malik Murphy look really good today. Which, by the way, the one-handed catch that 8 made for Duke.
That was dirty.
Absolutely sick.
And then the safety comes back 0 and makes another pick right after that was jumping, leaping. Yeah, and the Miami's not a complete team by any stretch.
Well, if you're the ACC office, at least, though, you can take a breath and be like, okay, we don't have to go through the insane, weird tiebreaker that we may have had to go through if all these teams ended up, if we had 3 that ended up undefeated. SMU, by the way, the rest of their schedule is one that looks like something they should very much take care of. I would think they'll be, they had Boston College at home, at Virginia, and then home to Cal. They're probably double-digit favorites in every one of those games.
But we've been talking about that. They also almost lost to Duke when they had 6 turnovers and looked absolutely drunk, at the wheel. So, I mean, I'm not ready to do. I get it, and I'm going to do that game too. And we're gonna look ahead and say this is they should win, they should be here. But I mean this year in
Well,
college football is awesome. It's
at least
fantastic.
with them with the win over Pitt, they have that kind of tiebreaker in a way. They're likely almost borderline, like punch their ticket to the ACC championship game. Big Ten, like you said, it's basically what does Indiana do against Ohio State, and then Oregon. They should, I think, also. So we're kind of getting some level of clarity within those conferences. Where there is little clarity, maybe a little bit more. But by the way, you know who had the best day today?
BYU.
Prime time.
Oh yeah,
Colorado. By
right
not
back in it.
playing, they are now
Kansas State loses. Iowa
Does
State
Iowa State?
loses.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Iowa State.
So Big 12 talk. Here we go.
Okay, Big 12. Iowa State, man, like Rocco Beck deserves some absolute love because Iowa State, listen, they're not a team that wows you anywhere, but they never beat themselves. They're always disciplined. They run the football, and Rocco Beck has been absolutely lights out when you needed him to be. And I say that big time moments down the stretch against Iowa, very little time, drive right down the field, hit a bomb field goal at the buzzer. Needed him against UCF. At UCF, drive down the field, score. Today, they just did it too fast. I mean, they did it to Texas Tech. They went down the field in the rain, only needed a field goal. They get like a 46-yard touchdown, but they left too much time on the clock. And Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, who have played really good football this year, by the way. I mean, they've been very solid, and QB being healthy makes a difference. And I thought he was really good in the back, by the way. Taj Brooks, that dude is an absolute manimal. I mean, he is 230 pounds, like built like a bowling ball. You better bring a lunch when it's like tackling a tree stump. Like, hey, go hit that tree stump right there. I mean, he is physical, great balance, and Texas Tech's offense did enough in the end to score. I thought they were going to shoot themselves in the foot, but Iowa State, Rocco Beck deserves love, man. That dude has been clutch, lights out. But BYU, who everybody had right before the season, like we all had BYU, of course, just to go in there in the Big 12. Utah to absolutely be not even relevant. Colorado bouncing back, hiring new coordinators, looking the part, offensively, defensively being so much more improved. So, I mean, the Big 12. Who do you got in the Big 12? You going to ride that Colorado train?
I mean, you have to hang with BYU at this point because of the consistency with which they played. But I will say, this is one where, and granted, they've got to keep doing it, but the leaps that Dion has made with his team, Coach Prime, the consistency with which they're playing, it was the coordinator stuff he was talking about. I think I heard he mention that the confidence in the coordinators. They're a legitimate football team 2 years after winning one game and getting destroyed in every single one of those losses. So they're in it. They're very much in it. They have at Texas Tech.
It is strange. It's strange to me, Brent. Like last year, all we did was talk about Colorado because it was new. And it was like, it was there and the celebrity to it. It's still there, but it's not near talked about it as much. And they're way better. They're actually competent and winning. And, it's kind of strange.
They're a quality football team.
Yeah, and now they're in the position to. And remember, you get an automatic berth in the college football playoff if you win your conference, and they're very much in that mix. And so, you might get more of Prime, and if you don't like that, then buckle up. You might, because I know you get plenty of commercials with him. Might get plenty more of them on the football field.
Him and the Duck and
Coach, hey, we got any questions in the chat? I'm not good at that stuff. We got any of those?
I don't know. Let me scroll back down and hit them where we go. Let's see. See who needs to be better in the trenches than to beat BYU. That's very true. Let's see. Okay, so comment from Jacob. I think Kirby is going to ride with Beck all the way this year. Of course he is. There's no
other choice.
But there's no if, ands, but. Exactly. He's going to be their quarterback no matter now, barring injury or barring, I don't know. I don't know what at this point he would have to do to make that change. there's too much that he does outside of just throwing the football to the other team. But yeah, I don't see that change happening whatsoever.
Hey, I obviously went to the University of Georgia. So I'm going to say that. Obviously, so I cheer for the University of Georgia. I'm never going to be a homer. I know some Georgia fans get upset with me about that, but I'm not going to be. I'm going to tell you exactly how I see it. I don't understand for the life of me. If you're Georgia, like moving forward, how do you not get an elite mobile quarterback? Like someone, if you want to run this type of offense and this is what you want to do and you want to go shotgun, like the ability to pull it and go get 8, go get 10. The offense is so simplified. Now listen, when you got a guy that can go through progressions and they've got weapons, it's hard to stop. It's really hard to stop. It's what Ohio State's been, Brent.
Yeah.
That's what Ohio State has been. A a quarterback that's in the pocket usually that can absolutely pick you apart, make big plays. And they got 0 championships to show for it. Stetson Bennett got 2. Stetson Bennett had the ability to make you play the first play and then the second play. So I get it. I get the talented guys that can throw the football over the yard, man, but I want the guy that as he's developing, I can stick it in the belly of somebody, I can pull it, and I can get 15 or 20. And as you're continuing to grow in this offense, I can use your God-given gifts to get better and better and better. And the teams that have that, I just like Rourke for Indiana can do it. You know, he's an athlete. He can do it. You can do the RPOs off of it. But I want that type of guy moving forward because I just think it makes defense so flipping hard to play.
And that's kind of goes to your point, which you talked about earlier with Gabriel. Like it's just, and especially in the college game, the NFL is a completely different game, but in the college game, that element is there. By the way, someone asked this: another 2 teams that had very good days. Those 2 teams, LSU and Bama. They didn't play. It's kind of a recurring theme on college football this year. If you don't play, you actually end up having a good day. So early thoughts about Bama LSU next week, because by the way, I think that's what all the chaos in the Big 12 ACC that helps those teams more than anything. So now you can't, like, the committee will look at, this say 11-2 or 10-2 Big 12 team versus a 10-2 SEC team. Now there's no comparison versus, say, a 10-2 SEC team, and it's down between them and a 12-1, 11-1, whatever Big 12 ACC team. I think that's who benefited most today was Bama and LSU from all the chaos that we saw.
Yeah, because when Iowa State loses and now whoever's that team that's not winning the Big 12, if they're not undefeated, but if BYU's a 1-loss team, that still could be something that's still
a little bit there.
Yeah, it's still a little bit there, but ACC not as much now because Clemson has 2 bad losses, one really bad to start the season, so I think they're out. Pitt, a drumming, I don't think they're going to run the table anyway, so definitely clears up a little bit. But LSU Bama's always awesome, and I've seen this where Alabama's supposed to win, always supposed to win. It's always supposed to go their favor. They're way more talented. LSU always gives them a handful, and so I think. Lane Kiffin was upset, like you talked about earlier in the show, because this game's going to be played at night, right? Mm-hmm. Like at night in Death Valley, it's a hard place to play. It's extremely difficult to go in there and get a win. I tried, I failed. Like it's just, it will make things. And here's what I saw from Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe in an elite atmosphere at Tennessee. They had delay of games. They had penalties, especially false starts. They were a little bit off rhythm, and when a lot of your stuff is timing and rhythm and your cadence is a little bit messed up, like that's a part of it. LSU's weakness is their secondary. Can you make plays on their secondary? Alabama's weakness is their passing game. Like it's not crisp and it's not accurate. Now here's the thing. Milroe can still hit those home runs. But I actually played golf, and this is unnamed, an unnamed source, Brent.
Okay.
Played golf with an Alabama ex-football player, and he was not a fan of Jalen Milroe. We need a quarterback that can throw the football. I'm like, they can't run the football outside of him, so you need him in the run game. They don't have great pass protection, particularly on the right side of the line, very much at all. So, like Jalen Milroe's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I mean, he's the one. He's not an elite passer by any stretch, except for the first half against Georgia. Dude is freaking lights out, unbelievable. But his feet and his athletic ability and deep ball is what makes it all go.
All right. So, any other things stand out to you in today's sort of college football world? I know one for me was Diego Pavia is very much Hugh Freeze's daddy, I guess you could say. Three consecutive victories. 3 consecutive victories over him. That was, and just the coolest part I think about seeing the end of the Vandy game when they beat Auburn is that was kind of like, yeah, we expected that. We're ready. We're ready for next week. Like, we're moving on. That's not a big deal. But for Vanderbilt to be a team that's now going bowling after 9 games, that's a phenomenal job from the Fighting Clark Lees.
No, they're incredible. The way they've built it is incredible because he literally built this around shortening games, an offense that's based, it's triple option, being aggressive, a quarterback that can create. What else stuck out to me is that, how about joining a new league, the SMU Ponies? You join a new league, you go to the ACC, you're supposed to have a lot of growing pains. Like, you're supposed to take your lumps. It's deeper, it's more talented. Your roster's stretched a little bit. We've known SMU has had really, really good squads and really good personnel. They made Pitt look silly, and their personnel looks pretty dang good, and they're winning football games consistently. So that's kind of crazy, and that stood out to me. Just the talent gap between them and Pittsburgh was huge, and that's kind of weird to say.
Yeah. By the way, USC loses again. They are now 4-5.
Hey, can we go back to that? Hey, you patted yourself on the back earlier with that playoff bracket.
That was a bad
USC.
one. Yeah, I meant to say Oregon when we did that. That's kind of went for the worse. All right, so one question and then one other random question. So we've got our current sort of AP top. I'll go through the top 15, and the question is, who do you think the committee is going to look at and rank on Tuesday, either a lot higher or a lot lower than their current ranking? So you've got Oregon at 1, Georgia 2, Penn State was 3, Ohio State 4, Miami at 5, Texas at 6, and then Tennessee 7, Notre Dame 8, BYU 9, Texas A&M 10. I'll go down to Indiana at 13, Bama at 14, Boise State at 15. Who is that you're sort of – who do you think the committee's either going to be much more fond of or much less fond of than what you see in the current kind of rankings?
I think Penn State's going to have to fall a lot. I mean, that sticks out the most. Like, they're going to have to go from 3. I mean, where does Penn State go from 3? They got to go below Texas, keep going down. I mean, they got to go. They're literally going to go from 3. I can't control it. They keep going down.
Probably
but
10.
I mean, they're going to be below Tennessee,
range.
probably below Notre Dame, below BYU. Like, I mean,
below Indiana. I think like that's going to be interesting to see how. I think the 2 most interesting ones with how the committee ranks them or 3 actually. One is Bama.
It's got to be Indiana as one of them, right?
But Indiana's another one. How high do they put them, given the fact that they've not really beaten anyone of significance? And the other one that we've talked about a lot, and I mentioned when we did our sort of that playoff projection, is Boise. Boise takes care of business again. Genty does his thing again on Friday night. And their strength of schedule is actually a lot better than some of these teams that they're fighting against. I think that one, and because if they put Boise in the 10-11 range to start, 12, like the possibility of them being much further up there, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's if Boise's higher than, say, a Big 12 champion,
they can climb higher than the 12 seed.
Right, they could be, but could they? No, they can't be 4. They can't be the 4 seed.
The 1 through 4 is going to be the conference champs.
Yeah,
correct. They're automatic buys. But here's another thing too, Brent. One thing that's crazy, and then we'll start to shut her down unless anybody's got any good questions.
I got one last great question, by the way.
Okay. Here's what we've seen in the past with this committee, dude. Remember, head to head will start to come into play later on a little bit too, because they'll jockey around and move, but in the end, head to head has always been a huge deal, and that's something that they'll look at down the stretch. But they're also been very willing to move people around late in the game. Like they've done that. It feels like they'll kind of put somebody there as a placeholder, but then Florida State, like, nah, don't really think they're really that great. We've kind of put them there because we feel like we had to have them there, and then
Yeah.
they'll slide somebody else in. So that definitely can happen.
So I guess two final questions. One, what do you think about the Cash Jones experience today in the Georgia game? Dude just keeps making plays.
I think Carson Beck should have thrown to him at least 2 or 3 times more where I thought he was open, but he just makes plays. I mean, he's super athletic, and again, people won't think that because he's light skinned. Like that's
Yes.
the way it works. Like, but he is. He's super athletic. He's quick as can be. He's not big, but Georgia's going to need Cash Jones with ETN now banged up and Frazier a freshman. Like you're not going to give him all the passing third down roll duties. So Cash Jones making plays, man. He's cash money.
Yep. I put a picture of him on Twitter where he's just living the dream. He's sitting up in the stands. He's got like 6 or 7 co-eds hanging around him. But last question, and then we'll get out of here on this. Do you have a Christmas tree up already or Christmas decorations? And have you listened to Christmas songs already because it is now November? Because I think I know the answer to said question.
Yes, and yes, baby. That there is
All the
there's
above?
absolutely we do. Actually, no, we do not have a Christmas tree up yet, but the outside of the house is completely decorated, and the Christmas music was flowing today. And my favorite part is my son's 16, and he met us this morning before we went and passed out like pamphlets for the banquet of blessings that we're doing. And he said him and Leah, his sister, was driving to the restaurant to meet us, and they were listening to Christmas music. I was like, I did something right. Like I absolutely love it. It is the most wonderful time of the year, Brent, and you know that.
And I also say that because this is one area where us as neighbors are very in unison. There are already Christmas trees up in our house. There was already Christmas music on. Pentatonics may have been flowing already. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
It absolutely is.
The most
And
wonderful time of the year in college football,
hey,
November.
I'm about to say college football is going to deliver, and it's going to deliver in the playoffs. We're going to have wackiness in the playoffs, and we're going to be here every week to cover it. And Eric, yes, we have decorations. You don't have any say. We get to do that. It's our house. And so you, sir, don't have a say with what we do, but appreciate y'all joining us. There'll be a lot more, man. We'll be back for the preview show next week to talk more ball. If you like us, hit the subscribe button. And if you don't, kick rocks. But no, a lot of season left, and we'll see you guys this week.
It's the most wonderful time.